Welcome. Thank you so much for joining our webinar from Awareness to Action, looking at how we influence secure behavior within your own organization. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm really excited. We're going to be delving into the fascinating world of influencing user behavior, and we'll also be looking at our latest security awareness training and phishing defense features. By way of introduction, my name is Simon Fraser. I'm the CEO of Hut6, and 6 years ago, we founded Hut6 to deliver some game-changing training to the cyber awareness market. We've built our own awareness platform with a focus on customization and behavioral change. And today we want to take our learnings from industry and the many awareness campaigns we've run, and we're keen to share with you our learnings to help you get from simple awareness all the way to action. First, though, we'll be hearing from our digital learn designer, Patrick Bousfield, on the psychology behind decision making. And then secondly, I'll be showing off some of our new features in our phishing simulator that are going to make campaign customization that much easier and be able to share with you a few of our newest features that you can get very excited about. So without further ado, our very own Patrick.
Thank you very much indeed. So just to briefly introduce myself before we go any further, as Simon said, my name is indeed Patrick, and I am indeed the digital learning designer here at Hut6. I'm going to be talking to you for the next sort of 30 minutes or so. Before we dive in, just a tiny bit more about me. My job at Hut6 is to oversee all of our learning material and invent new ways of teaching our content out. I'm a former classroom teacher, so I've got a good understanding of learning theory, as well as that all-important first-hand experience. But I have also been a manager in a company, a people manager, so I'm familiar with that perspective as well. I've been the one responsible for chasing up staff and making sure that they've done their training. And today I'm going to be talking to you about information security training and user behavior. During the session, we're going to be talking about how it's all very well telling people how to be secure, but how do we ensure that they change their behavior to act on what we've told them? Now, as an educator, I was extremely interested in this question, and I've really enjoyed getting the chance to learn a bit more about this. It's been really, really interesting. So this is what we're going to be looking at today, and hopefully we'll have some fun with it. So we'll discuss some of the most prevalent theories regarding human behavior and how they can be applied to our field. And we'll follow each topic with a discussion about some things that you as employers can do to help your staff act off the back of our training. So the theories we'll go through are social proof, commitments, framing, and windows of opportunity. And hopefully by the end of the session, you'll have learned a little bit more about behavioral psychology and maybe have some ideas how you can use this to help your staff act more securely. Okay, so to backtrack ever so slightly before we dive right in, I want to talk briefly about the two most common hurdles that we in this meeting face. Number one, how can we get users to complete the training? And number two, how can we make this knowledge actionable? So those are effectively the two main challenges, getting employees to take the training and then getting them to take action off the back of it. This talk will hone in on those two questions. So the first theory we want to discuss is called social proof. And the basic idea of this is that people are influenced by those around us. Robert Cialdini, who's a very, very prominent figure in this field. If you have 10 minutes at one point, I would highly recommend doing a quick web search for this chap because I found his perspectives incredibly interesting. So Cialdini hypothesizes that when we're uncertain what to do next, we look to others for cues on how to proceed. And the first thing to establish is that this is a useful instinct. For example, if you're walking down a street and you see people running terrified in the opposite direction, you probably wouldn't keep going in the same direction you were going. You'd most likely turn and walk in the direction the other people went. If you ignored what everyone else was doing in that situation, you might very well be walking into danger, right? I mean, I'm assuming everyone would do that. I certainly would. But it's a nice little example that shows how we have an inbuilt instinct to follow others around us. And what's fascinating is the sheer power of social proof. Sometimes, for example, even just framing a question so that it comes more from an angle of social proof can have surprisingly high results. And one case study from Public Health England demonstrates this. So the NHS recognised a danger in over-prescribing antibiotics. This is a recognised issue in today's world. They wanted GPs to prescribe fewer courses of antibiotics. And first they tried the traditional methods, so posters, awareness leaflets, etc. And initially £4 million was allocated to reduce prescriptions just by 1%, and then £150 million to reduce it by 4%. Okay, but they then tried an experiment in which 800 practices were sent a letter from the chief medical officer stating that the great majority, or 80% of practices in their local area prescribed fewer antibiotics per head than they did. And GPs that received this simple intervention saw a subsequent fall in prescriptions by a statistically significant 3.3%. So this proves that if we believe that others around us are acting in a certain way, we will be inclined to follow their example. Just like in the first example where we see others running and our knee-jerk reaction is to run as well, the GPs were instinctively inclined to follow their colleagues around them in prescribing less antibiotics. And it's one of the reasons that the letter specifically pointed out other GPs in the area were prescribing less antibiotics. It was tailored to the recipient. So this shows the power of social proof as a tool for changing people's behavior. When properly harnessed, we can achieve a desired result without people necessarily needing to think too much about the reasoning. It also shows how social proof and harnessing existing human behavior is far easier, and in this case cheaper, than other much more onerous and costly alternatives. Compared to the £150 million originally spent on trying to achieve this effect, this intervention cost only £20,000. So we know that social proof is incredibly powerful and worth using if we want to change people's behavior. So the next question is, how can we use this innate desire to be part of the club to our advantage in the world of information technology? Well, for the answer, we can turn to another case study. So in this study, researchers wanted to get more people to explore additional security features that they could adopt on their social media account. So with a sample of 50,000 Facebook users, researchers targeted individuals with various social proof frame messages, as well as control message. And that was designed to convince users to explore security features, examples of which are shown on the slide there. Now, the results of this experiment found that simply by showing people the number of their friends that used additional security features, users were 37% more likely to be enticed into exploring the promoted features themselves. And this is a tremendous success because simply due to the increased number of people learning about additional measures, the number of people who adopted additional measures also increased dramatically. It's a fabulous advert, really, for social proof as a means of changing behavior. Now, that isn't to say that this experiment did not highlight any limitations. I would encourage anyone who's interested to read the results of this exercise if you're very interested. But it does serve as tangible proof that we in our field can use this inbuilt desire to be part of the club for our purposes and potentially save ourselves considerable time and effort. Okay, so to summarize social proof then, it's a very effective way of inducing people to participate in something. But it isn't a cure for everything. I think it would be a little bit too easy, especially since we're only about 10 minutes into the talk. So I can't provide you with a panacea, I'm afraid. Social proof needs to be used carefully and in conjunction with other tactics. And it perhaps isn't the best model to use in order to get the ball rolling. You might want to use it more for maintaining momentum. And the experts also caution against desensitizing people. In other words, you have to be subtle. If you're too overt or repetitive, then this trick is going to lose its potency. So one thing that you as employers can all do in the here and now is take time to point out to your staff how many people are going through the same information security campaign. And this could potentially be done as part of company newsletters, email updates as part of team huddles. And it doesn't have to be overtly advertising the need for more engagement. As we've seen, all we need to do is subtly plant the seed in people's minds that everyone else in the company is doing this, and they will then make the connection themselves that they should too, even if they don't know that they're doing it. If you have data regarding employees' password changes, or perhaps their opinions regarding the safety implications of safety locking screens, this data can be used by you to demonstrate how many others are adopting the new secure behavior. And this would have the effect of creating a kind of cybersecurity club in the minds of the employees that they want to be a part of. So these are examples of how we can hint that by engaging with our training, users can join a team of other people who are also learning how to be more secure. So the end goal really is to subtly motivate users to complete our training by instilling in them a feeling that they should. And this leads me nicely on to our next topic. Commitments. Social proof is not the only means by which we can make people feel that they should do something. The next theory I want to discuss, it's quite a broad topic. It does encapsulate quite a few things, but the heart of the idea of commitments is that if people feel they've committed to something, they will be more likely to do it. Researchers have speculated this may be related to something called cognitive dissonance, where we're instinctively uncomfortable if our actions contradict our beliefs. In short, the fear of doing something contradictive prompts us to follow through on our promise to take the action that we're committed to. For a really quick example, we can turn to Cialdini again. As I already mentioned, he's a massive influence in this field. An example he cites in several interviews is a restaurant which was owned by a friend of his. And he recounts that they suffered because patrons booked tables but often didn't call to cancel if their plans changed. And this resulted in the business making losses and turning patrons away, when actually they could have seated them, despite the person who took the booking clearly telling them that they should call if they cancel to let them know that the table would be free. And the solution they found was extremely simple. It didn't cost them anything, and it relied on the principles of commitments. When taking bookings over the phone, they changed the phrase, "please call if you cancel," to "will you please call us if you cancel," and waited for the customer to confirm that they would. And this resulted in far fewer no-shows, and it solved their problem. So in this example, just by saying yes, the customers had committed. It was like something triggered in their minds, and they were therefore more likely to call if they cancelled than those who had just been asked and made no reply of any kind. So just like the theory suggests, they had set the expectation that they would call back and would instinctively feel uncomfortable if they did not, because this contradicts their earlier assertion that they would. So just like social proof, commitment is another way we all seem to be hardwired to follow a certain course of action if prompted in a certain way. So how can we use this to our advantage? Well, one case study from Stanford University in the 1960s demonstrates the fact that if we properly prepare someone, we can persuade someone to participate in something that they would not ordinarily do. The purpose of the study was to investigate the power of the commitment technique by dividing a number of people into two groups and telephoning them to make requests. So half the members of a focus group were asked over the telephone if they'd mind listing what household products they purchased, and obviously some said yes, others said no. And following this, all members of the group were asked if they would permit members of the research team to visit their house, have the freedom of the rooms, and make observations about what products they had in their house. Now, there was a significantly higher proportion of people who agreed to the second request among the group who had first been asked the initial request to begin with, compared to the group who had simply been asked the second request straight away. The people who'd agreed to the small request before being asked the second felt that they were committed and were therefore more ready to agree to the second request. Now, there's a good deal of speculation to be made here. Perhaps it harks back to cognitive dissonance theory, and members of the first group felt that they'd set themselves up as the kind of person who says yes to such requests and would therefore feel uncomfortable saying no to the second request. It's certainly one possibility. Another strain of the same theory is we instinctively feel the need to find a reason to say no to a request that we don't want to agree to. For example, if we agree to the small request, we might struggle internally to justify saying no to the second because we've already established that there's no good reason to refuse. We can't think to ourselves, for example, we don't have the time to talk because we've already said yes to the minor request, and that eliminates that as a valid excuse. So the old foot in the door technique really does work here, as what we're essentially getting at. So one thing that this case study makes very clear is that setting expectation early on is key. If we communicate that we expect someone to take an action, they will be more likely to take that action. We need to set the learner off on the right train of thought very quickly in the process if we are to see the biggest influence from the training. And this is one reason why several of our clients like to begin security awareness campaigns with communications that set the campaign up for success. So, for example, they could get the company director or the company CEO to do a little message, basically to send the first communication out in the process and set the training off on a good note and make the users feel committed from the start. We're in the process of making additional provisions within our material to make even more use of the commitments theory. So we're always continually developing in that regard. Okay, so there are two things to bear in mind regarding commitment. Number one, specificity is vital. Commitments are only effective if the steps to achieving the desired behavior are then spelt out. So we at HUD6 are clear in our communications how to achieve completion of the course. Our ongoing emails prompt users to undertake the next available tutorial. You, as our clients, can think about what you're asking your staff to do, whether that's contacting IT, reporting phishing emails, and question if it's easy for them to find out how to do those things. Is it simple to find the contact details for IT if there's an emergency, for example? Is it easy to find out how to report a phishing email if an employee should forget? All of these things are vital to instilling this behavior in your organizations. The other thing to remember is that choice is important. This technique works far better if we give people the choice to commit. So remember how we don't like to feel conflicted about things. It basically means that if we work really hard to get something, we value it more highly. Because if we'd done all that work for something rubbish, we'd feel guilty for wasting our time. And this leads to a situation where we choose the things we like, but we also like the things we choose. It's for this reason that user agency is so vital. People love to be in the driver's seat. And that also leads me nicely onto our next topic, which is framing. So Cialdini said, for a message to resonate with an audience, it must first be relevant to that audience's perspective. Altering the context in which people behave, rather than changing their minds, is one way of achieving behavioral change. So a quick way to demonstrate this is if you show people 3 cups, small, medium, and large. If you show any person this selection and ask which they'd like, most people would select the medium cup because they tend to say the small is a bit too small, the large is a little bit too large. But what's really interesting is that if you remove the smallest option and add an even larger option, if you then show people these 3 cups and ask them which they'd like, they still tend to go for the middle one because, again, they say the medium is a little bit too small and the biggest one is a little bit too large. So they go down the middle, which is actually the largest of the original options. So we haven't changed people's minds. We haven't given them different information, but we have altered the context of the question. And this results in people making a different decision. So how can this work in practice? Well, this case study demonstrates how. At a hospital, they had a problem with healthcare professionals not washing their hands enough. All research shows that regular hand washing leads to less deaths in hospitals. Now, they tried to solve this problem by putting up posters in the bathrooms saying, "Washing your hands keeps you safe." But they actually saw minimal change in behavior from this. It didn't work. So this could be because of a phenomenon that people have observed in which people overestimate their resilience to infections. Problem was not solved. So they then tried an experiment. They replaced the signs, which ones with the ones that said "washing your hands keeps you safe," with other posters, which says "washing your hands keeps patients safe." And they saw a significant improvement compared to when the professionals were prompted to keep themselves safe. Now, the reason the researchers gave for the success of this experiment is that the context of the prompt had been changed. Rather than directing the healthcare workers to think of their own health, which we know that they were less concerned about, it implored them to think of the health of the people in their care. So just like with the small, medium, and large cups, they hadn't changed anybody's minds. This experiment involved no additional education, but it achieved the change in behavior. So this shows how important it is to deliver a message in a way that resonates with the recipient. This extends even to the point that simply the person delivering the message is important. Some research has shown that if a person is relatable, the user will be more accepting of their advice compared to if the messenger seemed unfamiliar. So here at Hut6, we've always used an extremely wide variety of characters in our tutorials so that our end users will be able to relate to them and take the message away. And our earlier pre-communication messages are focused on personal benefit rather than company benefit to frame it in a way that speaks directly to the learner. So if you as employers can adopt these same tactics when your staff are told they will be commencing a security awareness campaign, make sure that it's communicated to them in a way that will motivate them. I don't need to tell you that, of course, no one likes being told you all need to do training because you're so thick, okay? I know it's an extreme example, but it highlights how a managed message can massively undermine a whole project. And this is where you, as managers, will need to gauge the culture of your organizations and manage that message in a way that will get your teams to participate willingly and enthusiastically. So if you know that your people are competitive, think of ways you can phrase it to almost pit the teams against each other, for example. On the other hand, if you know that your people aren't so keen on competition but are motivated by individual success, maybe the way to ensure that they're engaged is to highlight how well that they're doing in individual one-to-ones. Okay? But in any case, speaking of things that you can arrange with your organizations internally, leads me nicely onto our next topic. The last thing I want to mention is what we're calling the window of opportunity. The scientific name for this theory is called habit discontinuity hypothesis. Researchers found that people who had experienced a significant life change in the preceding 3 months were considerably more likely to report changes in behavior. So if you'd recently moved house, for example, you might be more amenable to changing your diet and eating healthier. So I don't think this theory needs that much discussion because it's a very familiar idea. I mean, we just have to look, for example, at New Year's resolutions. But it does, I feel, give more credence to the argument to get employees to complete training when they first join a company or change roles, sorry. It isn't just because they will be doing different, potentially more important stuff. Of course, they will be doing that. And they'll need to brush up on their cybersecurity. It isn't just because of that. It's also because they'll be more likely to change their behavior if they're already at a crossroads in their life. So at Hut6, we permit our clients to send out communications at times when you like. So you, as employers, can use this knowledge to coincide the release of new material with other significant dates for your staff. And this means that actually we should fight the instinct to hold back and not push staff to take on a lot all at once, because the science shows that in reality, these simultaneous changes don't hinder each other, but if anything, help each other. So if you're instigating a new business strategy or an HR revamp or a total rebrand, don't hesitate to make the changes that need to happen all at once. And where training is concerned, these simultaneous actions are potentially going to achieve higher results than if the training was to be scheduled at times when nothing else was relevant to your staff's calendars. So in my mind, the changes don't have to be that massive. For example, if the office has completed a quarterly deadline and the next period is starting, the teams will be feeling like something new is beginning, so they will be more happy to dive into a different behavior pattern. In this way, just to summarize, strike when the iron is hot comes to mind. And if we use all of the previous theories and manage to get the timing right, we can potentially see some real behavioral change. So I'd like to conclude by rounding off everything we've discussed. So let's return to the first questions that we started with. The first one of which was, how can we get users to complete training? Well, we can use the lessons learned from social proof to encourage users to undertake their training. We can use commitments principles to make people feel inclined to follow through with the course. And we can utilize an existing window of opportunity, at which time the user will be naturally predisposed to take on new actions. And as we've seen, all of these points draw from the principles of behavioral psychology. Our second question was, how can we get users to take action off the back of the training? Well, for this, we can use commitments principles to make people feel obliged to take on recommended actions. We can also frame the request in a way that makes it relevant to users. Using similar framing principles, we can make users feel happy to take on the new behavior. And finally, again, using an existing window of opportunity when users will already be more inclined to take on board new behavior. And that brings us to the end of my part. I hope everyone's enjoyed learning about that topic as much as me. I believe that we had a couple of questions from people.
Yeah, that's right. So we have had a few questions submitted by our audience. So Caitlin asks, how can you encourage a positive mindset in users that have failed a phishing simulation or test? Is there a way of making sure they see it as a learning opportunity rather than a failure?
Okay, yeah. So this is a really, really good question. The key is, I think, making it clear that we're all in this together. So obviously, here at Hut 6, we would never frame our feedback from phishing simulation training in a way that kind of makes people feel they've been castigated for falling for it. We'd always use phrases such as "don't worry," things like that. Just to make people understand that, if ever there's a time to make a mistake, it's here in the training and not out there in the real world. And, turning back to the principles of user behavior psychology, we can say using framing it in a positive way, also making use of social proof, explaining, other people have fallen for it as well. And then obviously outlining the clear steps for not to make the same mistake next time, I think is also going to be key there.
Great. And we also have a final question from Jane. Jane asks, how often would you recommend carrying out phishing simulations?
Yeah, so this was actually another really, really good question. We indeed did a whole other webinar on exactly this topic. I don't know if you want to briefly step in, Simon, and just talk a little bit about that. I know that was the one that you conducted.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for the question. We did do a webinar on the ethics of phishing, so deciding where the line is on testing your employees, and within that we discussed what types of attack you can use, how frequently you should do it. To summarize in brief, the most important factor in phishing exercises is to understand your own culture, to understand what your employees are looking for, whether they feel part of the process and trusted, and whether they feel caught out and having a gotcha moment is what we really want to avoid for educational purposes. And most people don't respond well to having been caught out unless that is within your cultural norms and how you like to run your organization. Critically speaking, for a new organization starting a new program, it's important to announce what you're doing. It's important to tell your employees, look, this will be the training program, this will be the regimen of phishing exercises. We have anywhere between, we see in some of our clients who do a sort of biannual phish in one half of the year, another half of the year, some people who run quarterly exercises, and even those who run monthly exercises. It really depends on the severity of risk that you are handling. So we recommend running more frequent exercises for people who are in charge of payments or vulnerable to certain types of attack that other parts of your organization won't be. So really it's a matter of measuring yourself and deciding within your program how well you want to meet the specific risks your organization faces. But most importantly, gain your colleagues' trust that you're not going to abuse their time or their resources in this exercise, and make sure that the exercises are worthwhile the risk that you are mitigating. I hope that answers the question. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Patrick. I really found that talk very insightful. It's great to apply so many great examples from psychology and various other sources to security awareness, and how we can convince people to make the most secure actions habitual. And I think that's really what you're zoning in on there, is how do we mind hack our employee base to try and say, look, this is what they're going to respond to well. I hope you'll find that insightful. The next bit I'm going to show you is a new feature we've just released called the Phishing Editor, and this is going to allow you as clients to or potential clients to edit your campaigns and templates that you use within those campaigns to a greater extent than we've ever been able to do before. This again will, as I was just saying in the last question answered, allow you to hone in on exactly what risks your employees are facing. So look at your typical emails you receive, mimic them, decide who in your organization is most at risk, and make sure that the type of template makes sense to the organization. As Patrick alluded to, the more that employees can feel part of the exercise and have ownership within it, the better. So if these emails feel like they are designed and relevant for your organization, they're going to be a lot more effective in being a learning moment. So this is the new functionality that we have built. So within this custom phishing templates section of our user dashboard, you will find our new editor. And so you can choose to start from a template, and these will be an ever-expanding library of new attacks that we're building out. These are 3-stage phishing attacks with an email, a website, and a training section. And the malicious website is hosted on domains that we own, and they're all accessible from within the platform now. So if I start from this pension parrot example by Hut6, there'll be others here alongside it that are your own, or you can even start from scratch, and then they'll appear within this. You launch the editor, and within here we've got a very simple, very easy to use drag and drop editor. So you see here we're editing the email currently. You can make sure that it's accessible for all different types of device and different types of users. Say I wanted to spruce this email up a little bit, I could quickly add in a footer, say, with a sort of 3 content structure, add in an image, delete that text, change this image out. So if I then click here to upload an image, say the Mirror's logo, and that will then allow us to change the email and say, you know, we took our pension parrot, for example, to begin with, but we want to change it to the delivery company Miras, as this is typically a user who deals with lots of on-site deliveries for your organization. Then we can make it look as reasonable as possible. So we can put in their address there, for example. Within this email, there are obviously suspicious elements, and you can change exactly what the email type is like, and you can see which indicators you want. You can allocate indicators for them to spot. So you can add in a new indicator and then put in the text for what you expect them to see. So here, this is a malicious link that you expect them to see. And the call to action is obviously trying to get you to go to a second location, as it were, to submit your data. And then when you've made your changes, you can hit save and then preview the training on the spot. And as you see, all of our training is designed around exactly what you see in the phishing exercise. So what they should have spotted as suspicious. So for example, we don't work with a company called Miras, or the link hovered over takes us to a new site. And so in this Pension Parrot example, we don't have a pension provider called Pension Parrot, and you'd be amazed at the number of users that have clicked on this template in the past. But again, it's all very simple. Then you can edit the website here. It's got different elements and structures in HTML. Once again, drag and drops, lots of easy elements to address, but I'm just going to quickly show you how easy it is to swap this out for another to our new home delivery company. And sort of this, if anything, should show you just quickly how quickly you can create new templates from either emails you've received. You can drop in HTML, you can put in your new headers, etc. And then over here you can choose what domain it's hosted at, what the titles will be, the template names, the different indicators again that they should have seen. And so here we've got this form. And then within our own technology as well, typically the as soon as a user interacts with this page, they get whisked away to the training page to say, you've been phished, this is what you should have spotted, etc. And that culminates in our usual real-time metrics and later generated PDFs per campaign for measuring the phishing susceptibility of our clients. So with this new functionality, if you're a current client, obviously you can set up a new demo with our customer success team to have you take a look around and show you exactly how to use this. But really, we want to put the main power of our customizations that we have in our training into our phishing simulator for our clients to benefit from. So hopefully that's an exciting new feature for you to be engaging with, and I look forward to seeing what kind of templates you guys come up with, and maybe we'll start creating a little tier list of the best custom templates out there and then share them with our clients. But thank you so much again for joining the webinar. If you do have any questions or want to follow up with us on anything that Patrick's been talking about in terms of how to run your awareness campaigns effectively, or even with myself to look at the new features we're rolling out, the platform and different light, I would love to hear from you. You can book a meeting with me via our website, or you can get in touch with any of our team from there. And thank you very much for your time. It's been a great webinar, and look forward to the next one. Thank you very much.